Good afternoon. I'm Katherine Klosek, Director of Information Policy and Federal Relations at the Association of Research Libraries, ARL. And in just a moment, we're going to hear from our esteemed panelists, who I know you're all here to hear from. We're going to hear about their funding priorities and programs, re-granting opportunities, and updates on federal agency activities around issues like public access, open science, and of course, AI and other issues. Without further ado, I'm going to welcome Brett Bobley, Chief Information Officer at the National Endowment for the Humanities, NEH, to kick us off. Brett.
Thank you very much, Katherine. Thank you for organizing. Really appreciate it. Let me just start by saying, I think all of us here, except Sharon, are all federal employees. And as you know, we're about to go through a pretty major transition in the federal government. So I just wanted to do a quick shout out to my fellow federal employees. We're going to continue to work really hard, do everything we can to support research and scholarship and all that kind of good stuff. We're not sure what's going to happen in the next year, but we're dedicated to trying to continue to do what we do. So thank you all. So anyway, I am the CIO at the NEH. I also run our Office of Digital Humanities, and I've got a bunch of cool things to talk about in the next 6 or 7 minutes, so we're going to rock right through it. All right, cool. First of all, very excited. You know, we've recently announced our new public access policy. As those of you who are public access, open access nerds know, the NEH is a little bit behind the other federal agencies who've had their public access policies in place for 10 or 12 more years or so. Ours is now live on the NEH website, nih.gov/public access, so please check it out. But very similar, if you're familiar with NSF and NIH and others, basically, if we give you money to do research and you publish a peer-reviewed article, you'll be sending a copy into the NEH to put in our designated public repository. So we're very, very excited about that. We really want to make sure that the general public has maximum access to the results of our funded research. And anyway, it's been a long time coming. So we're very happy to tell you that our new designated repository, we're just announcing this right now. The new designated repository for the NEH is going to be called NEH Commons. And we've got Kathleen Fitzpatrick is here from Michigan State. And they are the folks that run Knowledge Commons. And we've just awarded a contract to Knowledge Commons to run NEH Commons on our behalf. We did this for one major reason, which is that, you know, if we're going to have a designated repository with articles about the humanities, we want it to live in a place with lots of other articles from humanities scholars. We don't want you to have to come to the NEH website. We're going to have our own repository. So we have been a financial supporter of Knowledge Commons over the years, as has NSF and others. So we're really excited that they're going to be building a new front end called NEH Commons. You'll be able to search for NEH funded papers there. And in fact, I should note, not only will future NEH grantees be required to put their papers there, we're also going to, on a voluntary basis, we were going to ask older NEH researchers to put their papers in there as well. We want to try to build that repository as much as we can. So we're really excited about that. And look for more information about that over the coming months. And anyway, I'll stop there. But thank you very much on that. What else? Look how many cool things to tell you today. It's kind of crazy. Our public access policy, by the way, I should note that it mostly affects our scholars that receive research grants. So if you are a scholar that gets a grant to mount a museum exhibition or whatever, the new public access policy may not really be terribly applicable to you. It's mostly about our research grants. We also do have a part of the policy also will affect those scholars who create scientific data sets. Now, again, not most humanities researchers are not creating data sets, but those that do will again be subject to the policy as well to make sure those data sets are fully open and shareable to other members of the community. So anyway, you're going to start seeing our public access requirements in our NOFOs coming in 2025. Okay, this is kind of cool. We've got a brand new program coming out. Details will be coming out really soon, but I just threw this slide in there because I wanted to let you all know because I thought it was kind of relevant to the CNI community. New program is called Sustaining Our Digital Legacy. Perry Collins on my staff is kind of leading the charge on this. But basically, this is a new program explicitly and only for sustaining existing digital projects, existing digital infrastructure. And we really think this is an important area that funders need to address, right? We have, for many years in my office of Digital Humanities, we're funding all these cool, new, innovative projects, new tools, new this, new that, new exciting, new infrastructure. And it's relatively easy to get a grant for new and exciting stuff. A lot of funders, though, have trouble funding existing stuff, right? The idea behind this program, you can apply, you do not have to be doing anything new, cool, or sexy. You have to have an existing project that is already serving the field, right? You have some kind of a platform or tool or whatever, and people rely on your project existing every day. But maybe your grant ran out 5 years ago and you need money to keep the lights on, to sustain it. Maybe you need to rebuild your back end. Or maybe your project is over and you want to archive it so that it still exists in some form in the future, but you don't need to maintain it anymore. This is the program for you, Sustaining Our Digital Legacy. More details to come out soon. Yeah. And I'm also hoping other funders will copy this idea, because we need this. This is as much a problem in the sciences as it is in the humanities, based on many conversations I've had with other people in the sciences too. Okay, what else? 1 year ago, I was on the same panel that Katherine put together for us. And I mentioned a brand new NEH initiative, which is no longer a brand new NEH, it's now a year old, our Humanities Perspectives on Artificial Intelligence, which is addressing the ethical and legal and societal implications of AI. Since that time, we have awarded the first 5 AI centers. These are NEH-funded centers at 5 different universities, as you can see, that are focused on ethical and legal implications of AI. So that is the first round of our grantees for these new centers. We'll have another round in a few months. We'll announce another 4 or 5 or 6 winners, but these are the first 5. So that's pretty cool news. Another major program I talked about a year ago that is related to AI is our DOT program, the Dangers and Opportunities of Technology, Perspectives from the Humanities. Again, this program is not just about AI, but basically is about turning the lens of the humanities on technology, right? Studying the impact of technology of one kind or another. How does it impact the way we learn, the way we do our jobs, the ethics of technology, how it impacts anything from a philosophical perspective, historical perspective. Anyway, what's interesting to me is that this program has been like gangbusters. This is now the biggest program by volume in my office, in the Office of Digital Humanities. It has outstripped everything else. So, which is to say, we've the last 15 years been funding all these projects about how cool technology is and how you can use it for all these things. And now we're kind of catching up with the other side of the coin, which is, well, wait a second, what are the other ramifications of all this tech? So anyway, we're getting close to 200 proposals a year in this category. So it's definitely of great interest to the field. So we're happy to see that. But again, the topics are very, very wide. It takes a wide view of what technology is, right? It could be ancient technology. It could be guns and weaponry. It doesn't have to just be AI, although obviously AI is of great interest today in terms of what we're getting. I will stop there. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Brett. You're in danger of becoming a regular feature on this panel. I'm excited to welcome Sharon Burney up next. Sharon is a program officer at the Council on Library and Information Resources, CLEAR, and Sharon brought handouts that are stacked in the front rows here and also available here. You can grab them at the end. Sharon, welcome to the stage. Cody.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Burney, and I'm a program officer for the Council on Library Information Resources. And yes, we fondly refer to ourselves as CLEAR. Our work is accomplished by a relatively small group of about 20 geographically distributed individuals across the United States, with the majority living in the DC area. The grants team is made up of myself, program officer Allison Pope, program associate Jane Larson, Deputy Operations Officer Lizzie Albert, and managed by Louise Quajara. Together, we administrate 2 active regranting programs from application to final report. So although we're talking about funding opportunities today, it's more important to note that CLEAR is not actually a funding agency. However, we are a re-granting agency, and we receive generous funding from the Mellon Foundation. The first re-granting program I want to highlight is our Recordings at Risk program. So CLEAR came to recognize that there are unique challenges facing these performing audio and audiovisual digitization and description. The first and biggest of these is that much AV content is at high risk of being lost due to physical degradation and changing environmental conditions. So as materials disappear, we understand that culture does too. A second major challenge is often the specialized training that's necessary to address these description, storage, and maintenance needs. And the third is storage costs that are post-digitization, which he just spoke about a little earlier. And the final challenge is that intellectual property situations become difficult and tricky around AV content. So all of the projects that have been funded through Recordings at Risk had to work through some, if not all, of these issues and challenges. Though through this program, CLEAR aims to help organizations identify priorities for digital reformatting, build relationships with partners, raise awareness of best practices, and develop practical strategies for addressing all of them. And to this date, CLEAR has completed 11 award cycles for RER funding with a total of 190 projects involving more than 168 unique institutions and awarding over $5.8 million. The Recordings at Risk projects are 1 year and the awards range from $10,000 to $50,000. So in light of these challenges to unique AV collections, the Recordings at Risk program was developed with 4 primary assessment criteria: impact, urgency, potential for preservation, and approach to access. And these are different from our sibling re-granting program, Digitizing Hidden Collections, because the emphasis for Recordings at Risk is grounded in the need for preservation through digitization and the recognition that materials will have varying levels of appropriate access given legal and ethical concerns. So Recordings at Risk awards are smaller with shorter timelines and have a very narrow focus on the activities directly related to digitization. So to be eligible for Recordings at Risk grant, you have to be a U.S. nonprofit, academic, research, or cultural memory organization. Organizations and collections must be in the United States or an associated entity. Government units and their agencies are eligible if cultural heritage is your primary function, and federally recognized tribal governments are eligible. If you have any questions about whether your organization might be eligible or not, you can email us at recordingsatrisk@clear.org. The allowable formats. So Recordings at Risk doesn't have an official list of allowed or disallowed formats. We welcome applications as long as the format is audio and or audio visual. It's time-based in nature, so no still photographs or slides. And you can find a qualified external service provider or vendor that can perform digital reformatting in an appropriate way for the format and condition of the physical materials. It's important to note that the program was designed with analog to digital reformatting projects in mind. So while born digital AV content is no less important and surely at risk, it's not the focus of this particular program at this moment. There are, of course, a few formats that blur the lines, so of analog and digital distinctions, such as DATs. But this particular format is eligible and certainly at risk. Files on a hard drive, however, in need of digital reformatting are not eligible. Once again, don't hesitate to reach out to us if you're unsure about whether you fit that criteria. So our timeline for Cycle 12 will begin on January 14th, 2025, and that's when the call for proposals will open. Proposals will be due on April 14th, 2025. Recipients will be announced in early August 2025, and we always notify applicants individually before the public announcement is made. Cycle 12 is the last cycle of Recordings at Risk planned under the current Mellon Foundation Parent Grant. All projects must last between 3 and 12 months. And for Cycle 12, all project work should take place between September 1st, 2025 and August 31st, 2026. Next, Our second re-granting program we're going to talk about is our Digitizing Hidden Collections. And we launched a new iteration called Amplifying Unheard Voices in 2021. The current cycle for Cohort 3 initial applications did end October 30th, 2024. So we're in conversation with Mellon once again about future cycles of this program, but I'll give you a couple of details about the program. This next, the Amplifying Unheard Voices took on a thematic focus. And it means to digitize materials that deepen the public understanding of the histories of people of color and other communities and populations whose work, experiences, and perspective have been insufficiently recognized or unattended in digital collections. These often hidden histories include, but are not limited to, those of Black, Indigenous, Latine, and other people of color, women, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender, non-binary, and other genderqueer people in communities, immigrants, displaced populations, blind, deaf, and disabled people in communities, and colonized, disenfranchised, enslaved, and incarcerated. The Hidden Collection Program awards range from $50,000 to $300,000 and are 1 to 3 year projects. The Digitizing Hidden Collections Amplifying Unheard Voices program adheres under 5 core values. The first one is public knowledge. The second one is broad representation, authentic partnerships, sustainable infrastructures, and community-centered access. And the timeline right now for these, so some of you may have an application in, I'm not sure, but the deadline for the initial applications was October 30th, 2024. All organizations that are accepted to the final application phase will be notified in mid-February 2025. We anticipate providing a greater level of support to those organizations invited to the final round to help them develop initial applications into competitive final applications. This will involve a number of individuals from CLEAR's community, including members of our review panel, to assist in an applicant support webinar series. This was created to provide more intentionality on smaller organizations, organizations that have fewer staff members to carry out these application grants. So this series provides applicants with different aspects of the final proposal: the budget, digitization and preservation plans, collections, assessments, and rights, ethics, and reuse issues, with presentations and question and answer time from professionals with expertise in these subject areas. The final application is due May 5th, 2025, and we anticipate making the public announcement of funded projects in October of 2025. And I want to thank you. If you want more information, I have the handouts in the front that you can take and share. And also want to encourage you to sign up for the CLEAR Grants and Teams Programs newsletter, our CLEAR DLF job board. And if you have any questions, you can contact us at the emails on the board. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. That's really great. And I think it's great how the Recordings at Risk program touches on IP issues in particular. Next up, we will hear from Dr. Julie Fisher, Director for Publishing Programs at the National Historical Publications and Records Commission, NHPRC, at the National Archives and Records Administration, NARA.
Hello, I am Julie. I'm from the National Historical Publications and Records Commission, which is a mouthful, but it takes a while to remember NHPRC. But for those of you that are unfamiliar with us, we are the grant-making arm of the National Archives. We fund the collecting, describing, preserving, compiling, digitizing, and publishing of historical source material significant to the history of the United States. So we're a relatively small agency compared to many of our federal funding peers, but we have been exploring ways that allow us to best leverage the grants that we are able to make. So one recent avenue we are exploring is capacity building grants that specifically target archival needs, and I would like to highlight 2 of those programs today. So our first is going to be capacity building for HBCU archives. So we designed at least this first iteration to support essential archival activities. So we define that as education and training of working professionals, archival supplies, and planning documents, including things like inventories. So part of what we're hoping is in putting these things in place that this can equip a number of HBCUs to apply for more and more archival grants across the funding landscape. There's an emphasis in this grant on supporting collaboration, specifically reciprocal and respectful collaborations. And this is in no small part because this is the work that we see right now in the field being very, very effective. Again, because we're a small agency, it makes more sense for us to support people who are already doing the work than starting this from the ground up. This grant is going to, the deadline just passed, but like I said, we're hoping to run this for at least 2 more cycles. The next deadline is November 2025. I would like to highlight there is no cost share required, which we found is a barrier actually for many of our grantees at NHPRC across the United States. The amount being $150,000 to $250,000. And if you would like to have a conversation about this, you can reach out to the acting program officer, and that is Carmen Bolt. She's also the director for our forthcoming community programs. And next slide, is going to be our discovery and access to congressional records. So this is not so much a processing grant, but to surface solutions for libraries that are working with congressional records. So our intention is to fund projects that develop and promote models for addressing key challenges in the processing, long-term preservation, discovery, access, and research of congressional records collections. We hear from National Archives includes a number of presidential libraries and many people involved in our federal government, and some of these records are enormous, and people are looking for ideas and fixes on how to better preserve them. So, thank you. So we're hoping, again, that this will produce these long-term solutions to methodological problems. We imagine this will probably also take collaborative approaches given the scope of the problem. We're looking for people interested in state-of-the-field policy studies, and then, as always, education and training. Next slide. Next deadline is 2025. Again, no cost share required, which is something that went out in all of our notice of fundings that were just released in early November. In the amount of, for the grant of $100,000 to $350,000. Next slide. And the person to reach out to for this program is Dr. Mark Danley. It's a new program, so he's excited to hear from anyone with ideas about how to do this. Otherwise, you can find me as the director for the publishing programs, which is an entirely different conversation, but I'm also happy to talk about that if you have questions. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Fisher. I know everyone's pleased to hear from you today, so thank you for that. Next up, we will hear from Dr. Robert Hanisch, Director of the Office of Data and Informatics at the Material Measurement Laboratory at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. Dr. Hanisch?
Thank you so much. So we are not primarily a funding agency, and we don't work in humanities, so we're a little bit different than the others. We are the National Metrology Institute of the United States. Metrology is the science of measurement. So we develop techniques and technologies for doing very high quality, very high precision measurement. Just one example, we know what time it is to within 1 second of the age of the universe. That's 1 part in 10 to the 18th. We always start meetings 5 minutes late, exactly. So that's about NIST. What are we doing in the area of open access? As we heard from Brett, we all had, as federal agencies, to develop open access policies, public access policies. We were amongst the first cohort doing that because we are in excess of $1 billion funding in our agency. But we did have to update our plan to be in conformance with the Nelson Memo of August 2022 that has now been published and is available for your use. We have also updated our public data repository that was developed by my team, and we have also released version 2 of our research data framework in March of this year. That was an enterprise 5 years in the making, and I will talk a little bit more about the importance of the RDEF in a moment. But first, about the public data repository. This holds all of the data that supports the research publications from our scientists at NIST. We have a research staff of around 5,000 spread over several campuses, the primary one in Gaithersburg, Maryland, but also a major campus in Boulder, Colorado. At last count, we had of order 10,000 data sets and approaching 20 terabytes of data in this collection. The new thing I highlight on the left here, which is the CHIPS Metrology Exchange to Innovate for Semiconductors. The CHIPS and Science Act, I'm sure you've read about in the papers, is an allocation from Congress to revitalize the semiconductor manufacturing industry in the United States. NIST has a major role in managing that budget. Some internal research funds, but primarily we pass funds through to private industry and other organizations for developing research in this area. But we are responsible for maintaining the output data products from that program. And so this is a new aspect, a specially curated portion of our public data repository for semiconductor information. I really want to focus on the research data framework here because I think it is something that should really interest those of you in the library and library/IT community and universities. The research data lifecycle is based on evaluating the research data ecosystem into 6 major lifecycle stages: envision, plan, generate, acquire, process, analyze, share, use, reuse, and preserve and discard. And we found that a particular organization will have different levels of maturity and experience in each of these areas. They may be very well along in planning and generating and acquiring, but less so perhaps in sharing and reuse or preserving and discarding. So in developing version 2 of the framework, we put a lot of effort into making sure that every topic and subtopic, of which there are, I think, around 400, have references. There are over 1,000 informative references that we have indexed in the area of research data management. We also generated a number of profiles. A profile describes those aspects of the framework that you in your particular job have influence over or influenced by. So if you are a data curator, if you are in a research library, the profile for that role will tell you typically the kinds of responsibilities that you would have regarding the research lifecycle, data lifecycle management. It's also a way for developing conversations in your organization, between your IT support staff, between your sponsored research program officers, between your bench scientists, about how to improve your research data management posture. We have an interactive website available. The QR code will point you there. We have a dynamic knowledge graph in development. And at this point, our primary focus is on community engagement. These are initialisms, most of which this community will understand: RDAP, EDUCAUSE, Spark, Helios, etc. We've had a very good cooperation with the State University of New York, who was an early adopter. We will shortly be reaching out to the U.S. Agency for International Development and to Chorus. But we also do a number of other activities related to open science, open research, open data at NIST. I am a participant in the OSTP NSTC Subcommittee on Open Science, as are my colleagues Brett and Ashley. We have a subgroup on open science infrastructure, which will shortly be working with NIDR-D to develop a community of practice that will bring together government, academic, and private sector players in research data management to share information about most effective ways to implement open science infrastructure. I've been a participant in the National Academy's Roundtable on aligning incentives for open scholarship and the CODATA task group on digital representation of units of measurement. Within the metrology community, digitalization and data sharing have now come to the forefront. There's the CIPM is the International Committee on Weights and Measures, and has now created a new forum on metrology and digitalization, which focuses very much on incorporating the FAIR principles in all of metrology data taking. And even within our community at NIST, we are just now forming a community of interest on the digital NIST. How do we make all of our processes for collecting and sharing our data fully digital and fully born fair from the outset? And a corollary to this is that I've been funding an external analysis of a collection of data called our standard reference data, which is used widely in academia and the private sector. If you want to know how much steel to put in a bridge or in a pipeline or a reference DNA sample, we have it as part of our collection. So that's what I had to say. If you, I'm here for the entire meeting. If you want to reach out and learn more about what we do at NIST, thank you so much.
Thanks, Dr. Hanisch. I heard, community engagement, collaboration all throughout your work. So I think that's really awesome. Thanks for sharing it with us today. Next up is Ashley Sands, Senior Library Program Officer at the Institute of Museum and Library Services, IMLS.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you, everyone. In fact, I'm curious, can you raise your hand if you've ever applied for an IMLS grant, you or your team? Wow, look at that. I love it. I see a gap over here. Let's work on that for next year. So I'm not gonna go too in depth about what IMLS is, other than here we are. We're continuing to do our funding programs following our mission. I will also confirm that we also are working on our public access policy. Little insider baseball. I was working on that SharePoint document earlier today, hoping to get that out. If not within the next few weeks or month. And in fact, we started it based off of NEHs. So thanks to Perry Collins and Brett's team for developing that. We do hope that each of these public access plans are not something that you have to learn minuscule little differences between each agency and lose your minds. We really hope that they're following the same ethos. It's just, okay, where do I put that article? That kind of a thing. So hopefully we are collaborating enough through the Subcommittee on Open Science to make that relatively simple transition for you all. All right, what would I like to talk about today? Let's talk quickly about the library's archives and museum funding opportunities. A couple of new things to highlight that came out this summer. We have a new project type, and we have a new layout to our notices of funding opportunity, which some of you may have noticed already. Then I just kind of want to give some reminders about the technical assistance that we at IMLS are really happy to continue to provide. So you know about our National Leadership Grants for Libraries and the Laura Bush 21st Century Librarian Program. Those are the two big programs that we offer from IMLS to this community. But just a friendly reminder that we also have a program specifically for the Native American and Native Hawaiian communities, including the Alaskan serving tribes. So please consider, if you or your colleagues are members of these communities, that we also have funding specifically available to those communities. I'm on the library side of the house, so I mostly talk about our two library programs, but we also can't forget that the museums are very great. And most of you here at your institutions also have a museum or two on campus. So even as you consider the awesome library side of the house at IMLS, don't forget to collaborate across your campus to consider the museums and the kind of work that they might be able to benefit from applying to IMLS also. National Leadership Grants for Libraries, just a quick reminder that this is the one that you're probably thinking of when you're thinking of grants that IMLS is giving out. This is where you are benefiting the field and making new models, tools, research findings, services, partnerships. And the key here is that your findings can be widely used, adapted, scaled, or replicated. Then we also have the Laura Bush program, which in this program, the work that you're doing is specifically targeted to the library and archives workforce. So this is about us, the staff, the workforce, increasing institutional capacity. A key here of these programs is that there's far-reaching impact. Notice the asterisk. We'll continue on that in a moment. Is the work currently significant? Have you developed strategic collaborations? Have you demonstrated the appropriate expertise on the team? These are just some kind of key points. So what's new this year? I mentioned that we started a new project type. So we've always had, or recently have had the planning, forum, implementation, early career program for those with iSchools, library schools, and research. We have noticed that some of the institutions applying it to us were having trouble meeting that far-reaching indication. And in fact, their institutions are set up that they're supposed to impact their own community, and there's not really that time to be doing all this kind of far-reaching work. So what we've done is we've created this new category where you can apply to IMLS funding in both of these programs in order to adapt an existing model directly to your community's need. And it's not expected to have far-reaching impact. It's expected to be able to benefit your community. Now, you guys are all from larger institutions for the most part. So is CCI, as we say, is it for you? Maybe, maybe not. It's generally made to support the smaller institutions. But you can definitely probably think of examples at your own institution of things that you would like to try that you would need to be able to get a little bit of funding to be able to pursue. So you can kind of get the wheels turning. We've said that far-reaching impact, pounded that into your head over and over. There is now this opportunity to be able to apply for something that benefits your local community, which, could be social science undergrads at your institution or whatever community is how you define it. So the community-centered implementation you can see here, it's for 1 to 2 years from $25,000 to $100,000. So it's a relatively smaller amount that is able to be used for that. But again, you're not needing to collaborate with a whole bunch of other institutions across the country. Here's the amounts that are available. $50,000 is the bottom, and then up to $750,000 for research, and up to $1 million for the national implementation. Our cost share does kick in at that $250,000 mark. I do want to point out that our NOFOs, our Notices of Funding Opportunities, starting this summer, they look different. They literally look different. We've got little icons, like the idea icon or the check boxes. It's supposed to make it a lot easier to go through that really dense text. It's longer. The NOFOs are longer, I will admit that, but hopefully they are easier to parse for you to find the information that you need as you're applying. Really quickly, reminders about things that may or may not be unique to IMLS. We have that 2-phased application process. So in September, you only need to have a 2-page narrative that you get to us. Hopefully that reduces the barrier and get more project ideas from all of you. So consider that you do not need the full giant application package when you initially apply to our 2 programs. We can also read a draft. So we will have an internal deadline, but if you can get me your 2-page draft, we can then have a call and chit chat about it. We'll have a call, we'll chat about it. We can give some commentary about what we see in that proposal. So don't forget to submit in time to talk about the draft. And you can absolutely apply more than once. Many awards are granted on the second time they apply, sometimes even the third. The caveat here is that you need to be listening to the reviewer comments and ideally to your program officer. Again, we can continue to have these conversations to help you get to success if at all possible. And all of our funded narratives, all of those funded write-ups, they are publicly available on the website. So not only can you get a draft from us, you can also go see these recently funded projects and kind of get a look at the genre. How much time did they spend on this or that kind of a thing. If you haven't signed up to be a peer reviewer, please go ahead and just go to IMLS and the quick peer review. We would love to have you. We're always looking for new folks. And then here's me and my colleagues, but we're a tight-knit team. So just reach out to one of us, and we're excited to talk with you about the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. We always appreciate your generosity and candor with this community and timeliness. I'd love to invite Dr. Plato Smith, Program Officer in the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure at the U.S. National Science Foundation, NSF. Dr. Scott.
Thank you. My name is Plato Smith. I am a temporary IPA rotator program officer in the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure. So I'm in year and a half of a 3-year appointment. This presentation will introduce 3 funding opportunities that are relevant to the CNI community. One is Campus Cyber Infrastructure, also known as CC STAR, Cyber Infrastructure for Public Access and Open Science, also known as CPAILS, and the National Artificial Intelligence Research Resource. The Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure, also known as OAC, is within the Directorate of Computer and Information Science and Engineering. OAC includes a director, deputy office director, 3 managers, supervisors, 16 program officers, and 3 open positions. So if you know someone that's interested in replacing me in a year and a half, please talk to me. It is an outstanding opportunity, seriously. The goal of OAC is to transform science and engineering research through core fundamental cyber infrastructure research, community software and data platforms, campus and regional investments, national scale cyber infrastructure service providers. OAC is organized within SIZE, but serves broad science, engineering, research community. The Office of Assistant Director includes an assistant director, deputy assistant director, with input from the SIZE Advisory Committee. The 3 divisions within SIZE include the Division of Computer and Network Systems. I was trying to.
You know, it's not a touch screen, sorry.
No, those are great. CCF and can't scroll down to the last one. Let's see.
I don't know. How did we do this?
Oh no.
Here.
Don't worry about it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, let's just go back to the
Sorry.
screen. No, that's fine.
Technology.
Okay. All right, thanks. Sorry about that. No problem. Some current challenges facing SIZE include, but not limited to, growth of data, specialized hardware, rapid advance and integration of AI into scientific application and workflows, new business models for computing and data infrastructure, and cross-agency initiatives, global competition, and need to broaden access to resources. Key opportunities and priorities include enabling discovery through integration of data, software, and the infrastructure ecosystem, growing and developing communities, and investments in new technology adoption and scaling advanced infrastructure. This is one program solicitation. Colleague Amy Apon is a program officer, and also Kevin Thompson. So if you're interested in CC STAR, Campus Cyber Infrastructure, also known as CC STAR, supports coordinated campus-level networking and cyber infrastructure improvements for science application and distributed research projects. CC STAR includes 5 areas of research, which includes data-driven network infrastructure, computing and computing continuum, network integration and applied innovation, data storage and digital archives, and strategy. The Cyber Infrastructure for Public Access and Open Science, CPAILS, supports early-stage socio-technical partnerships focused on research data infrastructure ecosystem. The 3 themes or pathways include competency building, capability building, community building. The CPAILS program was published on April 8th, 2024. The program was developed to structure OAC's strategic investments in public access and open science projects. And briefly, there was just some recent awards in fiscal year 2024. The priorities of the program include advancing collaborative activities among and between campus collaborators, elevating the partnership with university libraries. That was one of the key ingredients for this program, is to build and establish those partnership with university libraries, thus very relevant to CNI community. Promoting public access, open science, research data management, and international collaboration. Supporting research and development tools and infrastructure, and support reproducibility. Support of the program includes directorate office and program across NSF. The current partners are Bio, Director Bio, Education, Geo, Engineering, MPS, Social and Behavioral Economics, SBE, the Office of Integrative Activities, Office of International Science and Engineering, and TIP, Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships. This is in response to a recent Dale Carleague letter, NSF 24-85. Funding opportunities include eagers, 300,000 up to two years, conferences and workshops anywhere from 50 to 100,000 on the 2 years. The Dear Colleague letter was leveraging cyber infrastructure for research data management. NSF 24-085 was published on May 1st, 2024. Fiscal year 2024 funded awards include one standard grant. Basically, that was a co-funded with a CSSI, which is cyber infrastructure for sustained scientific innovation, 2 eagers, and then 8 conferences. At a conference, going off script a little bit, but with my supervisors, they looked at this and like, why are you funding more conferences? And the motive behind that for this year, only for this DCL, was to broaden the community building. So I know for some, there are some people in here who submitted, like, hey, but still have some might carry over to fiscal year 2025, but yeah. Basically, it was to broaden more of the reach of conferences. Actually, we have, I don't mean to put her on the spot, we have a couple of PIs in the room. The National Artificial Intelligence Research Resource, also known as NAIR, is a vision for shared national research infrastructure for responsible discovery and innovation in AI. Key areas include computing, data sets, educational material, user support. NAIR is a public-private partnership bringing together 12 agency partners and 26 non-governmental partners covering multiple research disciplinary domains. And the goals include spur innovation, increase diversity and talent in AI, improve research capacity for AI, R&D, and advance trustworthy AI. And here are some NAIR pilot opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. You know, we've been tracking and sort of following NAIR, but it's really great to hear about it from you and to hear about sort of these opportunities. So we have time, 12 minutes, for questions for our panelists. So microphones are in the aisle. This can't be. This is always, there's always so many questions for, I guess it's late in the day. I know some of your colleagues are in the audience. I don't know if you want to add anything or share. Yes, okay. Hello.
Hello. I have a really easy, short question in the absence of more profound ones right now. So a question for Plato. For the eager grants, what's the funding ratio like for that?
Yes, for eagers is 300,000 up to 2 years.
No, what was the ratio for like
Oh,
awardees?
the ratio?
Yeah. Like how competitive is it, in other words?
It's very competitive. Oh, yeah. I know that's probably just a simple.
Are you allowed to say how many
No.
applicants you had? Okay, thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Hard question.
Correct.
The reception next? Is that why everyone's...
I had a question for Brett from the first presentation. So the NEH public access guidelines make a point that only scientific data sets need to be made available. So presumably there's a bigger world of data sets, some of which don't count as scientific and therefore don't need to be made available, which seems odd in the humanities, perhaps. Maybe you could clarify a little.
Well, first of all, now that I've learned about metrology from Bob, I'm just going to get into metrology now. I think the humanities needs more measurement. No, I'm just kidding. It's a great question. The Nelson memo talks about quote unquote scientific data sets, right? And honestly, I'm sure there's a lot of interesting analysis of what that actually means in practice, right? But we want it to be kind of clear because in the humanities, we rarely, but not never, we don't often fund the kinds of data sets that the Nelson memo is kind of talking about. Specifically, like data sets, for example, where if in order to understand a peer-reviewed paper, that peer-reviewed paper, you really need to have the data set, right? For like reproducibility perspective reasons and things like that. Now, we do occasionally fund work like that, particularly in like archaeology and linguistics and some areas of the humanities that where they do genuinely create data sets like of that sort. At the same time, though, we want it to be clear because a lot of our applicants, for example, if you're an English literature professor and you're doing research to write a book about Shakespeare, you probably are not creating a scientific data set. Now, you might obviously collect some kind of information about Shakespeare and about his works. We wanted to make it clear that that's not a data set in the sense that we're thinking about. You don't need that data set to reproduce the person's new book about Shakespeare, right? We didn't want to scare a lot of our researchers, to be honest with you, by saying everything you do is a data set now, you know. So yes, we use the term scientific data set directly out of the Nelson memo as a way of getting people to understand we're only talking about certain types of true data sets like that. Hope that helps.
Maybe there are questions that you don't want to ask into a microphone. So, are you?
Let me ask. So, I cannot talk about future solicitation. The only thing I can say is check the website soon under OAC, and I'm just not allowed to talk about what's in the works. So, you know, if I appeared a little vague, that was the reason why.
Well, thank you to our panelists. I think maybe we can hang out, and if folks have questions, if you want to come up here, maybe we can do it that way. But thank you. Join me in thanking them again.